Hey everyone, let's talk about, in this second of 3 videos about the Nikon FM10, how to use your camera and what the different features and functions do. The first one is, let's talk about mounting and unmounting your lenses. So to unmount, gotta reach my hand through the tripod. To unmount your lens, you put your thumb on this button here, and then rotate your lens clockwise, and you've unmounted it. To mount your lens, you want to find your focusing index, which is that white line right next to infinity on this one. Line up your focusing index with the white dot and turn counter or anti-clockwise until it clicks, and you're mounted. And any AIS lens will work and mount in the same way with this. Don't use other lenses than AIS, AID lenses. NAI, G, those lenses will not work. I'm not sure about VR lenses. I don't think they will. So to load and unload film, the first thing you need to do is open up the camera's back. Now with the camera's back open, I'm going to grab a 35mm film cassette and just slide it in like that. Drop the knob into place. I'm going to pull out a leader. Now this film is already shot, so it's destroyed. That is not shot as in pictures have been taken with it. Alright, so once you get your film loaded, then normally you would close the camera back, but I am not going to do that. Now you can see here on modern film cassettes there's a little text strip right there, and that's what you see through the window on the back. I'm going to show you what happens when you're using film. So you would line up your picture, you'd get it framed, and you'd get it metered properly, and everybody's happy, and Bob's your uncle, as some of my viewers say. And then you take a picture. Shutter activates. Now you advance the film. There we go. And you can see here's the outline of where the shutter curtains are. Take the picture, and it advances. So here's the previous shot, and then it's got a new shot with a 2mm space in between. And you'd go the whole way through the film, and then when you rewind the film, you would click this button on the bottom, the film rewind button. And you would, obviously, keeping your film back closed the entire time. You want to keep your film back closed anytime you have film in it that you're using. And then you just rewind the film. So while we have the film in here, let's talk about making a double exposure. So the FM10 has a double exposure button right here. So what you would want to do is set up your shot. Now let's say that it's going to tell you 1/125th of a second at f5.6. If you take your first shot at 1/125th and then your second, you're going to be overexposed because it's effectively like taking a single shot at 1/60th. So if your meter reading, whatever your meter reading says, make your shutter speed 1 stop faster, 1/250th. Take your first shot, hold down the double exposure button and the film rewind knob. There you go. Taking your first shot, take your second, advance the film, put your lens cap back on, take another shot, and advance the film. And you take a dead shot after your double exposure, because what happens when you engage the double exposure mechanism is that it prevents the film from advancing, but that also throws off the gearing in the advancing system. And so when it does advance, it takes a partial frame for the gearing to get back into alignment, and so you take a dead frame to prevent overlap from your next image on your double exposure. Because otherwise you've done a lot of work with your double exposure and the result isn't going to be anything to be happy with. So let's take a look. So here's some science behind it. So for double exposure, you'd want to increase by 1 stop. But let's say you want to have a triple exposure. Then you keep your aperture the same, and no matter how many exposures you do on a frame, you want to keep your aperture the same. Triple exposure would be 2 stops, quadruple, quintuple, and so on. And so that's a pretty good rule of thumb for doing double exposures. So let's take a look at inside the camera at what's happening. So when we take a normal picture, so we take our picture and then we advance the film. Now we're going to do our double exposure. We've metered, we've got the shutter speed set correctly. We're going to take our first picture, hold down the double exposure lever, hold down the film advance knob. There we go. Take our second shot. Now you'll see that it engages pretty quickly, but it doesn't necessarily engage with the proper registration. So then we'll put the lens cap back on. And there we go. Now one thing to bear in mind about using this camera is a very nice feature that it has is that the film advance lever is also the shutter lock. So when your film advance lever is in the body, you cannot take a picture. When you pull it out, then you can take a picture. So you've gone through your entire roll of film, and you've taken 36 fantastic shots. Now you want to rewind it. And you don't open the back until you've completely rewound it. That was the sound you're listening for, and then you would rewind the film cassette entirely into the body, or into the film entirely into the cassette when you're done. I'm going to hold on to this for other videos. But then after you take your film, you would take it off to be developed. Or develop it at home yourself if you're up for a challenge. So let's change the battery. So the first thing you're going to need is your nearest North Korean half dong, or whatever this thing with the fox on it is. We're going to go to the underside of the camera, and you're going to unscrew it counterclockwise. This camera takes 2 LR44 batteries, so all you need to do with the coin is to get it started. You don't have to take it the whole way. Release it. Whoa. And here are the batteries. So it's 2 LR44s, and the positive side goes away from the base. And to help remind you of that, you can see on the battery case it has 2 LR44 battery shapes showing the positive side up and the negative side down. So what you would do is make sure that you have clean hands when you do this, because the oils on your fingers, if they get onto the contacts, can damage your batteries and cause them to corrode or leak. So you're just going to put them both in like that. And then just drop them into the camera's body. And it's been a little bit tricky getting this battery chamber to seat properly. There it goes. It's cooperating this time, it seems. So that's the batteries. That's how you change them. The flash hot shoe on this is on the top, and it does not have a PC port, unfortunately. So if you want to do off-body flash, which is the best type of flash, you'd want to get one of the things that connects to your flash hot shoe, and either is an RF adapter, has a cable coming out of it that you can connect to your flash, or is a master, like an infrared adapter. The cable's going to be the cheapest. The RF adapters are pretty cheap if you buy them direct from China on eBay, and they're actually what I use. I think they're the best solution, actually. At any rate, the sync speed is 1/125th of a second. You can see, because it only has the one contact in the middle and no additional contacts, that all that it can do is power the flash at full power. It has no ability to communicate flash power or metering information to the flash. So it's a pretty simple flash setup. All right, here we are looking through the viewfinder, and that is the best I can do about getting the lens cap in focus. But you can see there is the split ring viewfinder, and what you would do to focus with this is get something like a vertical line in between the split rings and then focus until the lines come together, and that lets you know that it's in focus. Over on the side, you can see the lens meter. A red negative means you're a stop underexposed or more. And this right now is telling me that I'm less than a stop underexposed. If I switch to 1/1000th, that's properly exposed. 1/500th is a little bit more than a stop, a little bit less than a stop overexposed. 1/250th, now we're into the one or more stops overexposed. So when you look through the meter, if the meter says red minus, you're underexposed and need to give yourself either a larger aperture or a slower shutter. If you have a green dot, you're ready to take the picture. If you have a red plus, you either need to give yourself a smaller aperture or a faster shutter speed, or a little bit of both, some from column A, some from column B, as they say. And that will allow you to correct your exposure to get the proper exposure. Now, it's a center-weighted meter, so let's talk a little bit about some metering tips and tricks with this camera. Let's say that this is the scene that you're looking at right now. We've got a dark block in the center of the frame right here, lighter over here, lighter around the outsides. So if you were just to frame to take this picture, 60% of the metering data would be this dark block, which means you might come in at 1/60th at f8. Let's just say for random numbers. However, if this was your frame, it might say 1/250th at f8. It's a pretty substantial difference. So what you could do if you have a high contrast scene like this is meter off of the dark area, meter off the light area, and even if you wanted to, meter off the gray area. But at minimum, meter off of these two areas. That will give you 2 data points, and then you just split the difference. And you'll have a dark area that's a little bit dark and a light area that's a little bit light. The other thing you could do is bracket your images. So this is telling you 1/60th, this is telling you 1/250th. So you shoot at 1/60th, 1/125th, and 1/250th, and now you've covered all your bases, and you're going to have a shot that will turn out how you want it to. So the meter, it sees the central area as 60% of the meter, but it assumes that what it is seeing is a flat gray, an 18% or 12% gray, depending on which camera repair technician you ask. And so even though this is black, the camera is going to look at this and assume that that is gray. Even though this is a very nice cappuccino gold color, the camera will look at that and assume that it is gray. So understand that whatever you see, the whole scene it's going to think is gray, but the majority of the data is coming from the middle, and so you need to compensate a little bit if you have something that's dark. Let's say you're out taking a picture of snow. You've got a snowy field here. If you just meter, all your snow is going to be gray. So what you need to do is to correct the tones, that you need to overexpose 2 or 3 stops maybe to make your snow white instead of gray. Likewise, let's say you're in a cave and you want to convey some idea of darkness in the cave. So your camera's going to look at that and say, oh, everything's gray, but it's really not. So you need to underexpose a couple of stops to keep those tones correct. So we've got the depth of field preview lever right here. And what this does is stop down the aperture. Let's see if I can show you what that looks like. So if you activate the depth of field preview lever, it shuts the aperture a little bit, and then you can get an idea of what your depth of field will look like. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. And so that will help you I use it a lot with macro photography, so that if I'm taking a picture of something and I don't want to have a distracting background in the macro, like grasses or branches or something, I'll stop down to see what the image is going to look like. So I misspoke a little bit in the first video. I said that this button right here is the exposure measurement button, or memory button rather. It is not. It's the exposure measurement button. And what that does is that's effectively a meter reading. So you can take a meter reading either by half depressing the shutter button, not fully depressing it, until you get some resistance that turns the meter on. You can also turn the meter on by doing this, and using this button is helpful because it prevents you from accidentally taking a picture before you're ready. And so this will display the meter reading in the camera, and then you can adjust your your settings as you need to. And so those are the Nikon FM10's features. If you have any questions, please leave them below. I'm more than happy to answer them. If you have comments, same thing. If you'd like to subscribe, please click the subscribe button and you'll get to find out when I have more film photography videos. And I have a bunch more coming about how to do different things with film photography. If you have ideas for future videos, please let me know. And if I have the equipment and the technical know-how, I will make them. And one last thing, thank you guys for watching.